Episode 6 of Star Trek Picard Season 3, entitled The Bounty, is without doubt the busiest and most eventful episode of the season. It's also chock full of Easter eggs, continuity references, and nods to lore. In some cases, quite literally.
I don't understand the world anymore.
Yeah, I'm totally right there with you, Riker. Episode 6 is among the strongest of the season, and you get a real sense of intensity and urgency in the plot now, since the stage was set in the previous episode, Imposters. So let's dive in. I hope you've already watched the episode before watching this review, of course, because I'm going to spoil basically everything. So, with that out of the way, here goes. The episode opens with 3 Federation ships warping to the location of what they believe to be the Titan, but it's actually just a transponder decoy. Thankfully, we get more gorgeous 25th century Federation ship design once again. Vadic is back in the Shrike, and she's not happy that she's lost the Titan and demands her crew track down known associates of Jean-Luc Picard. I have to say, I really enjoy the humorous edits of Star Trek that Major Grin makes on YouTube. And I think he's going to have a field day with this scene because Vadic has one of her insubordinate bridge officers killed in a manner similar to how Commander Kruge killed one of his bridge officers in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And of course, this action contradicts what we know about changelings. They don't harm each other. Remember, on Deep Space Nine, Odo killed a changeling, and then he was turned into a solid because of that, as punishment. He was told that previously no changeling had ever harmed another. But here's Vadic just casually having another changeling bumped off on her bridge like it was no big deal. Now, after episode 7 airs, I will explain why I'm not really a big fan of Vadic. I think she's just too arch, cliched, and a little bit overwritten. After the credits roll, we pick up the action in sickbay, where Beverly explains to Picard that their son Jack has inherited Picard's irritable syndrome. Well, at least it wasn't his irritable bowel syndrome, which might explain why he's having such vivid hallucinations and violent outbursts, but let's be honest, that syndrome simply cannot explain his glowing red eyes, super fighting abilities, the hallucinations of those tentacle things, and of course the spooky red door. Something else is clearly going on here. And let's be honest, we all know what's behind the red door, right guys? Obviously behind the red door is the Red Angel, because Michael Burnham's mother is obviously the villain this season. Big Mike's mama. Big Mike's Mama's House, the movie. I know. For a second there, I almost had you. Picard chats to Jack in the holodeck, where the young man is drowning his sorrows. Picard, of course, died of irritable syndrome in Season 1, but was brought back to life with his new positronic body. Jack isn't feeling quite so lucky. 7 of 9 informs Picard that Raffi and Worf have arrived. I love how Picard knocks back a generous measure of bourbon in this scene before going back on duty. Nothing like being well over the limit in command of a starship. Technically, anyway, Shaw is back in charge now. Raffi and Worf beam aboard. Now, presumably, they caught up with the Titan using the La Sirena, but the ship isn't seen in the episode, begging the question, where is it exactly? There's some nice reunion banter here, Worf commenting on Picard's tart sour mead, the Chateau Picard. Raffi and 7 of 9's past and rather contrived relationship is thankfully glossed over without much deliberation. It's time now for a big and very important and long overdue conference room roundtable exposition scene where all the pieces of the plot so far can be put together. Worf summarizes the outcome of the Dominion War. Starfleet created a virus to stop the changelings, which Picard then says they also developed and delivered a cure to the changeling Great Link. Whatever the conspiracy may be, the changelings are plotting something big for Frontier Day. The use of the portal weapon at the Starfleet Recruitment Center was merely a distraction to conceal the theft of something else from Daystrom Station. To be fair, this isn't new information. This is about the 3rd time we've heard all of this stated this season. And if I'm honest, there is a small issue here. If the changelings are conspiring in secret, which they are obviously brilliant at, given that they can take anyone's form, why even bother attacking the recruitment center to begin with? It's sloppy and unnecessary. Just break into Daystrom, steal what you want, leave, and just hide. If anything, the attack on the recruitment center was a poor distraction because all it did was raise a major red flag, and draw attention to the perpetrators, which exposes the changeling infiltration in the first place and leads to an inevitable investigation into their activities by Starfleet security and Starfleet intelligence. Why didn't the changelings just steal what they needed and then keep super quiet until they've completed their plans for Frontier Day? Anyway, the scene merely tells us what we've already known for about 3 episodes now. They need to get to the Daystrom station, uncover the inventory manifest, and find out what else was stolen. So that's where they head off to. But there's heavy Starfleet security there, as well as inside the station. The away team is comprised of Raffi, Worf and Riker, and they have to contend with the sophisticated and lethal security system. They use the device they took from Kryn to bypass it and begin to snoop around. All the while the Titan is in trouble. 2 Federation starships find them, and they have to get out of there and leave the away team behind. Picard tells them to head to the Fleet Museum in another system. Now, back before the season aired, I told you that I felt Raffi became likeable this season, and very much one of the team. I was specifically referring to her scenes here at the Daystrom station. She works very well alongside Riker and Worf, and does a good job refereeing the 2 men as they playfully banter between each other. Anyway, the security system recognizes Riker. We see an old photo of him, circa Star Trek Nemesis, and a security measure is deployed accordingly. A holographic Crow, and then suddenly a gun-wielding Moriarty. Daniel Davis returns in this cameo, wonderfully delivering a charismatic and Shakespearean performance in his brief few scenes. Daystrom Station also gives us a glimpse or two at some Trek Easter eggs. There's an attack tribble, a second-generation Genesis device, I guess something similar to the one we saw in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and what appears to be bio readings for James T. Kirk. Is this his body? His remains? Is he being kept alive on life support or something? Was a new android golem created for him, and has his consciousness been transferred over to it? Huh. Interesting. Well, the Titan arrives at the Fleet Museum, which is a space dock surrounded by legendary retired starships. Geordi is in charge, and he's not happy with them. He beams aboard, and he's reunited with his daughter Sydney, and then we meet his other daughter Elandra, played by LeVar Burton's real-life daughter, Michaela Burton. Picard wants Geordi's help to evade Starfleet, obviously, but as Elandra explains, despite her father's objections, every Starfleet ship is now fully integrated into some kind of system. Essentially, they all talk to each other remotely like transponders or beacons. It's inevitable that the Titan will be detected, eventually, when it gets close enough to another starship, and it's the reason they were found near Daystrom Station. Back at Daystrom Station, Riker, Raffi and Worf are dodging Moriarty's weapons fire while a series of musical notes are played. Riker eventually recognizes the tune and whistles the next few notes, which Moriarty responds by saying "marvelous," a throwback to Data's reply to Riker's whistling of the same song from Encounter at Farpoint, where they first met. Moriarty disappears, and they enter a room with a Soong android, who looks a lot like an elderly Data. Geordi tells Picard he wants to help him, but at best he's looking at court-martial and is concerned for his family. Elandra asks, "Dad, what about Hangar Bay 12? To which he replies, "Elandra, please." Come on, Geordi. What's taken so long with the paint and powder coating of that Millennium Falcon that we know you've been restoring in Hangar Bay 12 this whole time? I mean, I will acknowledge coaxium is a little harder to come by in the Star Trek universe when compared to Star Wars, but can't you at least retrofit the Falcon with a dilithium-powered warp core instead? I know, such an idea would be sacrilegious to Star Wars fans, but at least you now know what's hiding in Hangar Bay 12, folks. Sorry for the major spoiler. I've clearly ruined the entire season for you, but before anyone tells me I'm going overboard here, I will have you know the Millennium Falcon was actually an Easter egg in Star Trek First Contact in the battle against the Borg Cube. That's a fact. It was thrown in there in the background by Industrial Light and Magic as a joke. So technically, the Falcon is canon to Star Trek. The end. Okay, let's continue. On the bridge of the Titan, Jack and Seven have a look at the fleet of historic Federation starships on display at the museum. And this is pure fan service, and why the hell not? It's wonderful to see these ships again. There's the Defiant from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the USS Voyager from Star Trek... what's the name of that show again? Nah, it's not coming to me. And of course, Kirk's Enterprise, NCC 1701A. It was last seen, of course, in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, looking every bit its beautiful Constitution-class self. With each ship shown, the appropriate musical theme is played also, which is lovely. Interestingly enough, the USS New Jersey is also shown, a first series Constitution class from the original series era, although I don't believe it was ever canon before now. The design itself is the original version of the Constitution, and not the updated 25% different Discovery/Strange New Worlds design, so that's a good thing. Finally, we see a ship I didn't expect to see again. A Klingon bird of prey, specifically the HMS Bounty, which apparently was very difficult to dredge up from the San Francisco Bay at the end of Star Trek IV The Voyage Home because the cloaking device had reactivated. Very, very clever indeed. So, all of this fan service wasn't some random act of cynical member berries. It actually provides a practical solution plot device. More on that later. It has to be said, there are some other iconic ships visible at the museum space dock. Some Romulan and Klingon ships, but also an assortment of other very recognizable Federation classes, such as the Akira class, Excelsior class, Nebula class, and Constellation class, but none of these ships are specifically identified by name. So, for example, we have no way of knowing for certain if this Excelsior class is in fact the USS Excelsior. But what's most interesting is that there appears to be also an NX class refit, which might very well be the Enterprise NX-01. If the NX-01 did receive the refit treatment, then that would mean that Archer's Enterprise wasn't in fact decommissioned at the end of These Are the Voyages. But anyway, I'm digressing here. Let's get back to the plot. On Daystrom, they play a recording of the now dead Alton Inigo Soong, the brother of Noonien Soong, who says he's created a new golem android, a much more human one, with memories from Lore, Lal, Data, B4, and himself, all thrown in there. A primary theme of this episode deals with parents trying to pass on the best parts of themselves to their children. There's a nice thematic reflection between the scenes on the Titan and Soong's speech at Daystrom. LaForge talking about his relationship with his daughters, Picard obviously thinking of what he's passed on to Jack, while Soong describes this new android, which also has the true human aesthetic of age. He hopes that with all of these disparate personalities inside it, something or someone will emerge to be the best of all of them. Also, there is another way of looking at this theme, which is Soong says that evolution is not an act of preservation, it's addition. So here we have this previous generation starship from a couple of hundred years ago, the Bounty, and it's basically passing on something important to the USS Titan, the addition of the cloaking device. Geordi argues with his daughter Sydney, who refuses to go back home with him and wants to help her new family on the Titan. LeVar Burton and Ashley Sharp-Chestnut are really fantastic in this scene, and it's also great to see Burton get to explore a completely new side to the character of Geordi, a mature father figure role. On Daystrom, the away team realizes that Data, for lack of a better name at this point, is in fact the manifest list. He knows everything that has come in and out of Daystrom, so they need to retrieve him, but Starfleet board the station and come looking for them. With the aid of Sydney, Jack steals the cloaking device from the bird of prey and attempts to install it on the Titan with less than stellar results, so Geordi is forced to help them. But not before a surprisingly lost for words and humble Shaw geeks out all starstruck at meeting his engineering hero, Geordi LaForge. The Titan gets back to Daystrom, and Picard tells them they're going to cloak near the station to avoid detection. And I love how Riker says, "Cloak with what?" To which Worf replies, "My guess, superior Klingon technology." Riker tries to buy them some time by engaging the boarding party directly, but he's captured. Worf, Raffi, and Data beam aboard the Titan. Worf vows to Picard that he will find Riker. Jack comes to see his father, and sort of humble brags about all of the positive attributes he's got from his mother, but also the ones he got from his father, which is most poignant. So it wasn't all just Irumodic syndrome. Maybe he inherited some good attributes from Picard also. They get Data 2.0 back to sickbay and reactivate him. They're trying to find out what was stolen from Daystrom, obviously. He cycles through a few personalities and appears to be stuck in a loop, saying Jean-Luc Picard over and over again, but in truth, he was merely responding to Picard's question about what was stolen from the lab. He projects a hologram from his eyes, and it's human remains of Jean-Luc Picard. I told you they were going to hang a lantern on that later in the season. So Picard's human body was stolen from Daystrom. But why? Meantime, Riker is taken prisoner aboard the Shrike by Vadic and takes a beating before being brought to a holding cell area where we see a familiar face, Deanna Troi. The episode ends. That was a lot of story and developments crammed into a single episode. This was an excellent installment with, I think, a brilliant balance of character moments, plot development, and action, as well as amazing music. Plus, tons of canonical tie-ins, fan service, callbacks, and Easter eggs for fans to talk about and debate for ages. Episode 7 isn't quite as strong, so I will have quite different things to say next week. I'm personally of the belief that episodes 7 and 8 are best watched together. So, the big question that we're left with after this episode is, what on earth do the changelings want with Picard's human body? I look forward to all of the speculation in the comments below, of course. What's cool is that the Titan is now equipped with a cloaking device, but not just any cloaking device. This is the very same cloaking device that Kirk and the Enterprise crew used on the Bird of Prey from Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. There might be a couple of people asking, why didn't they just install the cloaking device from the Defiant? But keep in mind, this is the second Defiant from Deep Space Nine. The first one was destroyed. This second Defiant, originally the Sao Paulo, never featured a cloaking device like its predecessor. Anyway guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Let me know your thoughts on episode 6 in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.